Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. Before I introduce my guest today, I just wanted to make sure that you know about the free guide that is available on my website. It's the 5 best ways to support your loved one dealing with a concussion. If you have a friend or family member who is struggling with post-concussion symptoms, or if you're the one struggling and would like your loved ones to know more about what you're going through and how they can help, head over to my website, theconcussioncoach.com, and download the free guide. My guest today is Kellianne Arnella. My friend recommended that I connect with her on Instagram, and I have been very impressed with the content that she's posted, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I feel like it's so funny. Instagram and just social media, you feel like you know people before you actually meet them. So I feel like we're already friends. We're going to get along just fine. It's going to be good. So Kellianne is a passionate occupational therapist with nearly 15 years of experience specializing in adult neurological rehabilitation across inpatient, outpatient, and community-based models. She is committed to expanding access to care through innovative, tech-enabled, and alternative service delivery models. Recently earning her doctorate of Occupational Therapy degree, Kellianne brings both depth and adaptability to the evolving landscape of rehab. She has designed and led programs that integrate patient needs and current practice trends to personalize care and improve outcomes for individuals recovering from stroke, brain injury, and concussion. In addition to clinical work, Kellianne serves as an adjunct professor, mentors future therapists, and has presented at multiple national conferences, sharing her expertise on neurorehabilitation, digital integration, and service accessibility. So thank you for being here, Kellianne. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for it too.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Okay, so I would love to start off with just hearing a little bit more about your path to occupational therapy. What got you interested in the first place, and then how did you end up focusing in on the neuro population and specifically concussions?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started out, I wanted to be a physical therapist. And I went to, I grew up playing sports, and that was like my experience was going to physical therapy when I had an injury. I always knew I wanted to be in some sort of the helping professions. And then when I went to college, I was in one of the first years that would have been a 4-year undergrad with the 3-year doctorate program at the university that I went to. And I started out as a kinesiology major and just, I don't know, I wasn't, I liked the science part of it, but I just felt as I was getting more into the prerequisites and stuff like that, which they are actually the same for OT and PT, really. But
Mhm.
as I started to learn more about physical therapy, for me as a person and me as a clinician, OT was much more dynamic. And I started to learn about sort of like the neuro world and felt more drawn as an OT um, because of that population, and then ended up switching over to OT. I really focused my whole not my undergrad, but when I was getting my master's in OT, focused everything on neuro rehab. A majority of my projects were neuro based. I was one of the students that knew I wanted to not work with kids. Not that I don't want to work with kids, but I wasn't in it to go work in a school or to work in developmental sort of pediatrics, which a lot of my cohort wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be on a brain injury unit. I knew I wanted to do, neuro, working with Parkinson's, with MS, spinal cord injuries. And so then focused essentially all of my work and then my field works and my job search towards that population.
That's awesome that you were able to come in so focused and you like knew what you wanted. That's pretty awesome. So that's been the populations that you've been working with from the get-go, it sounds like.
Yep. So I started as an inpatient rehab. I started in inpatient rehab and I was on a, not a general unit, but we had 54 beds and they were split between ortho, neuro, um, and as I was there, they created a TBI program. So we had a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
Um, and then switched into outpatient, and I was in outpatient adult neuro. I've been in an outpatient adult neuro for the past, oh my gosh, almost 10 years.
Okay, awesome. That's great. You've got so much experience working with this population. So I'm curious, as you've been working with so many different neurological conditions, right? People with different neurological conditions, um, what was different or what was surprising to you about the concussion patient specifically? Because it is a
Yeah.
different thing. So what was, yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
when did you
yes.
start getting, because, and I'd be curious too to know how, like, I feel like concussions is, it's not new. Obviously, it's not new, but like
Oh, but it is.
the attention to it and the specified treatment
Yep.
for it is new-ish. And so
Yeah.
how did you start to see, and you've been practicing for a while, like how was that change for you? And then what was surprising about working with that population?
Yeah, so I work my 15-year tenure has been at Rusk Rehab at NYU. And so we have had since probably, I don't know when the concussion center opened, but I want to say it was probably 2008, maybe 2009.
Hmm.
So we have had one of the largest and almost longest running concussion centers, I'd say, in the country. And so it has always been, I started there in 2010, and we didn't get concussion patients in inpatient rehab. However, we were always trained really strong in neurological vision. And so from our, initial onboarding and when we are mentored by more senior staff, neurovision is like a major component of that training.
Hmm.
So we always had a little bit of an in with at least the vision side of the concussion.
Hmm.
But then also, with like the general neuro side. When I switched to outpatient from inpatient, which was, like I said, about 10 years ago, I didn't actually start concussion for a year. I was on maternity leave and we did again, more specific training for concussion and complex vision. And so, um, I was always interested in it because I have always loved the sort of what people call now the full scope part of OT, where I've kind of always practiced that way, but without a name to it. Seeing outside the box, putting in multi-systems, layering systems and programs and treatments to not just address one aspect of care. Um,
Good.
so yeah, so when one of the big, a surprising component of concussion is that especially because we're still on this like cusp of, we can call it newness, right?
Mhm.
Is that how we haven't realized that people can actually get so much better from a concussion? Like there are so many assessments that we do that we like components of vision that we look at, balance, returning to activities and measuring components of someone's life that if we kind of just focused on these areas a little bit instead of saying, rest and see what happens, that we can actually there's tangible change. People are actually getting better. Um, and that was probably one of the, it almost it's not like an orthopedic case where there's like a 6 to 8 week time frame you can kind of anticipate, but I find that concussion is more predictable when they get the right care. You can actually like I don't know if that's coming across the right way. Like I wouldn't like they're not protocol. Like I wouldn't do protocol work with somebody with a concussion, but I would say that they are more like when I have someone I know what I need to look at. I know where the where the performance error is occurring that's going to impact the symptom, and I can help improve that performance and help them actually live their lives in a more full way. Um, so that kind of shocked me. It's not like it's like, you can actually help people. I think that is like a good positive bonus, an exciting sort of um surprise, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's different than what people have been told or believed for ever. Like up
Yeah.
until fairly recently, it was like, oh, you hit your head. Okay, go sit in a dark room. Oh, you're still having symptoms. Well, I guess this is your new normal. Good luck. Right?
Yes.
That's the
Yep.
treatment people got. So yes, the
Yep.
fact that there is treatment and ability to get better is surprising for the state of where we're in right now. Unfortunately, it's a little bit still surprising, but so good that we know this and that there's goodness going out there into the world to help people figure
Uh,
this out.
There's
So
movement. Yep.
yes, there is movement here, which is so important. Um, and I'm curious, I'm guessing that are you mostly seeing people who have had concussions more recently, like a little bit more on the acute side, or is it more the post-concussion, like months
J-
later?
So no, I get everything, right? So people who have had a concussion and there was still within that window where I'm like, okay, look, you can still have some natural healing occurring here. We're going like if you're overly symptomatic, if they're within that sort of 6 to 8 week window from the time of the injury.
Hmm.
I kind of, I'll do an assessment, even someone who's like 4 weeks out, 3 weeks out, I'll do an assessment and, kind of balance a little bit. But I've also had people who have had concussions for, they're months out and they're still having symptoms. Furthermore, especially at NYU, we work very closely with our neuro-ophthalmology team, and our headache specialists, like our neurologists that specialize in headache. And they kind of get funneled into our complex vision program where they have sort of determined that their migraines or whatever is occurring might be caused by a complex vision issue or binocular vision disorder. And part of the questionnaire is if they've ever had a concussion. And, you're having this conversation with someone and they're like, oh yeah, I had 3 concussions 10 years ago. And then, you're finding that they really sort of habituated
Yeah.
not necessarily appropriately, and then they changed their lifestyle when they graduated college or whatever, started working, and then these symptoms like re sort of appear. And so
Yeah.
even in the sort of so yes, like we get all stages of
Yeah.
concussion. So like the acute, sort of subacute phase, and then that chronic, phase. And sometimes those are the people that I'm like, I love when we capture them, because no understanding that there is the history of a concussion, right, can kind of make, it gives us a little bit more in, like clues as to like what might be occurring and who else we can refer them to help them appropriately.
Yes, yes. And I think that's again that's that's part of why I do the podcast here is because there are a lot of people out there living with this who have adjusted their lifestyle who but they don't realize that it's related to
Yep.
concussion from the past or whatever. And it just yes, they want people to know that change is possible. The healing
Yeah.
and recovery is still possible even years down the line. So I appreciate that. And tell me why, well, as I was like looking at the stuff that you've posted and reading your bio and stuff, I can tell that you also feel very passionate about helping people in this population, as do I. So tell me why you feel so strongly about doing this work, like why you love it.
Yeah, so it's actually a bigger story, as you notice with mo many of my answers. I just, rattle on. But I work in one of the biggest cities in the world, right? In New York City, and you'd think it's one of the most accessible cities. And it's, where our rehab is. It's at the center of Manhattan, right? I spent, as I mentioned before, inpatient's a different story, but once you're an outpatient, you start to know a little bit more about people's, lives and sort of the stressors that are involved in getting them to and from this care that can promise to help them so much.
Mm.
Um, I realized that there were many, many people coming in, and we were the eighth person, the eighth clinician that they saw trying to get help. And I was like, well, what is getting in the way here? Like, what is the barrier? And that was actually one of the biggest catalysts for me going back and getting my doctorate. And my entire doctoral project was based around increasing access to care and
Mm.
determining what was getting in the way. And so one of the things that we looked at was how many referrals we received for occupational therapy. Um, and how many actually got converted into evaluations and ongoing treatment. And it's something like it was only like 33% of evaluations get converted. And the reason why those 75% of evals, which is like something in like 7,000, like something like that within a year, um, we would call those patients and ask them like what was getting in, what happened? Why didn't you come here for therapy? And they were like, well, we thought we could get care closer to home, right? However, it wasn't specialized, right? And so they were going to a general sort of orthopedic clinic or a general rehab. They didn't understand what occupational therapy did. Um, and the other part was that they couldn't physically get into Manhattan um, for the appointments consistently and within a feasible financial capacity. So just kind of giving a little bit, like crossing Manhattan. So it's not even a mile wide, and it can take you over 35 minutes to cross Manhattan at the most narrow point. And so, or I shouldn't say at the most narrow point because someone is going to listen to this and say, like, oh, all the way at the tip of Manhattan, it's only 2 blocks. But in the center of Manhattan, in Midtown, in the 30s, it can take you, and especially, I mean, think about the holiday time. We're right down the road from Macy's. And so it could take over an hour to get across town. I had people that were coming from where I live now, which is in New Jersey. And I go into the city, it's not a problem for me. But people were taking a car service an hour and a half to go into the city to get care. And so there was a major access issue. And the big thing, is really access, awareness, and affordability. And it's really that comprehensive affordability, not just does my insurance cover this, but what is it costing me? Am I needing childcare to get there? Am I taking time off of work? It's really that comprehensive piece.
Mhm.
Um, that was a barrier for people, as well as not knowing what the care was and sort of like, with the availability. So we were for a long time the only place offering concussion care. Now there are more, larger systems offering this, but um, even now where I am, it's 45 minutes to like the closest, you know, concussion center. So, and when you think of the nature of concussion, it's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna drive and get symptomatic to work on your eyes to get more symptomatic and then go
And then you have to
home.
go home. Yes, I was going to
Right.
say that exactly. Like going through like 30, 45 minutes or more to get to, and especially in New York City. It's just like that
Yep.
is the most overstimulating place possibly on the planet. No, not
Yeah.
sure there are other places, but not
No,
very
but
many that are
I always say
equally
it's
or
like,
more so.
yeah, I say it's the best and worst place to recover from a concussion because I'm like,
Right?
you have nowhere to go. I mean,
Yeah.
you do, but also it's like no matter what you step out and you're like, you got to be alert. You got to
Yes.
be aware of what's going on. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's that would be very, very challenging. But I think that what you were saying too is just that you have to take into account that all of the aspects of the accessibility, affordability pieces. Like it's not just what it takes to get there, but what it takes out of
yep.
you and and
Yeah.
everything. I have friends, people that I know here in Utah who like the closest concussion actually for them, I don't know if you would know if it was specialized in concussion, but like they were kind of further out there and they were within their what insurance would cover. The closest they could get to was 45 minutes
Yep.
away. And that's yeah, it just makes it not accessible, especially
Yep.
like you said, if you're having to deal with all of the overstimulation of driving and everything on top of the actual therapy itself. So yeah,
Yep.
so I love that you are passionate about this and see um I, what needs to happen. I'm curious, and this might be a little bit of a tangent, but where has
Okay.
that led you? Like, what is that study, that research that you've done? What what do you see the possibilities for improving those areas are?
Yeah. So my project, which is kind of it's now finally coming to fruition. I built sort of an alternative service delivery model where um, telehealth and in-person therapies could sort of coexist within the same program for a person.
Mm,
Um, if there was a need for, more in-person sessions, they're available. It's essentially my private practice that I've kind of developed over the past few years.
mhm.
Um, the Instagram, which is, I know, again, like I find Instagram, I find it ridiculous. Like not ridiculous, but it's like, it used to be a place for us to post pictures, but now it's somewhere where I can share information that someone who doesn't know that they're looking for it can find it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I find that so much of our outreach, as, even within like my like larger medical centers. So much of our outreach, you're sort of advocating within the circles that already know what you have available and what you're offering.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is probably part of your other one of your other questions, but like almost not like sort of my vision is to like take the hospital centric model and build a community responsive model that kind of puts the components of a comprehensive concussion system not so much within a structured hospital system, but out in the community. Um, but yeah, it's really my vision and what it's driven me to do is kind of create what doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So like that alternative service delivery model, in-person, telehealth. I do offer some coaching as well, not only for concussion, but for, you know, all neuro rehab. Um, and really kind of advocating wherever we need an advocate and not relying on our, AOTA, not just relying that someone else is doing the advocating for us, but really digging my nose in and trying to figure out like what are we doing here? Recently, I don't know if you saw it. I watched a webinar on concussion in pediatrics in schools, and there was no mention of OT on it. And I just was like, wait, like,
Yeah, no, that's
uh,
not okay.
I was like, and I'm like, you're talking about peds, like you're talking about being in a school. And like, yes, I know there are physical therapists in school, but if you ask anyone, you're gonna think like, oh, an OT is in a school.
Yeah.
And for us to be kind of like, maybe a school OT probably isn't not well trained, but the
Yeah.
focus of training is not necessarily on concussion, but could we create something?
It could be.
Yes.
Yes.
And
We need to
it
be.
could be, right. And
Yes.
so because I've had a lot of teachers reach out to me on Instagram and they're like, my kids they can't engage in class. They can't look down and up. And, there's so much misinformation and it's not to anybody's discredit or their fault. It's just if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
But tomorrow, or what day is it? Today's Monday, Tuesday. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with the Brain Injury Association of New Jersey after, because of what I posted. And I wrote them an email and I said, look, like, I know that you guys know what we do, but if you're going to post that as a webinar to school nurses and to doctors, and then that's, you have to be included. And
Yes.
I think I was a few years ago would have been terrified that someone would have been like, Kellyanne, be quiet. But
Oh, it
if no
needs to
one's
be
gonna
said.
do,
I'm
we got to
so
do it.
grateful. Yes, I'm so glad you're doing that. That's so good. It's so needed. And just think of the change and the impact that could happen if people were using the OTs as resources and if the OTs were trained well in concussion. And again, that's the
Yeah,
thing. It's like people do need to understand concussion. So if we can improve concussion
yep.
education and then the availability of that treatment getting out there even more in the community is so, so good. So thank you for what you're doing.
No, I
I
mean, it's the
love it.
start. So,
Yeah.
sometimes I do these things and I'm talking with people, I'm like, wow. And I'm like, we think, I shouldn't say we. Sometimes I'm like, well, everybody knows this. And people are like, no, like, I've met with schools recently, and the athletic director was like, we go through the return to play protocol, and if we get them, if we know they had a concussion, we try to get them on the return to play protocol. But post that, no one's monitoring it. And so
Yeah.
then 6 months down the line, he's like, they might quit the sport, but like, is it because of the concussion? We don't know.
Yeah. Yes. And nobody's following up with them. And so, yes. Okay, good. Love what you're doing. Thank you. And again, this is so needed. I hope that all of the other therapists out there who hear this will feel the bug to go and talk to people in their areas
You
as
can be
well.
an advocate too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. You can be an advocate.
Yeah.
Everyone can.
Yeah. And even, like if there are parents listening, like there's the more you know, the better off you're going to be able to be in order to advocate and help your kiddo, your loved one, whatever. Like this
Yeah.
is so good. So you mentioned, I think we haven't talked about this yet, but one of the topics that is important to you is the like what happens after the initial phase of concussion. So I'd love to hear you share what your thoughts are on what people should be looking for after that acute phase, and who people should be looking for in the community to help them.
Yeah, this is huge. I've been building a resource too, which eventually I'll share. I can send it to you whenever it's done.
Awesome.
Um, but it's really, important to note that like if you go to if you get if you have a concussion, right? Your kid or you sustain a concussion, you go to the emergency room. Um, your care might end there, right? Um, you might go to your pediatrician within a week or a neurologist, and again, your care might end there, or you might be at a 6 month follow-up, right? Um, After that initial phase of the injury, which, depending on where you look, the information might be different. So let's say like you have that 7 to 10 day window. If, and then there's within the first month, right? You can still have sort of lingering, symptoms. However, you can also develop symptoms months after. And part of that being because of the natural way your brain heals and is, you know, um, filtering sort of like what it has been doing. But also like if people are taking that advice to rest and do strict rest and not engage in any activity, um, you can actually be making your symptoms worse because when you go to re-engage in those activities, you can then start to experience eye strain, headaches, migraines, nausea, anxiety, difficulty, in crowded environments, for various reasons. So the media puts like such an emphasis on, so and so had a concussion. What are we going to do? Is he going to be able to play? Is he going to be able to do this? But there's no talk really about sort of like those sort of like the subacute to chronic phase of concussion. And there is an issue there because some people don't develop symptoms. Some people are totally fine afterwards, right? But then there's another group of people that aren't so fine, and then they feel like the symptoms are in their head. Or because it's invisible, they think that, there's nothing there, or their providers might think that. And so I think it's important to really focus on more attention to what to look for after that initial window, after that initial phase of the injury, so that you can find the right providers in the community.
Yes.
Now, finding the right providers in the community, that is, step two. But again, part of my vision is, I've worked in one of a big central concussion center that we had like sort of like a filter system, like ER to, ophthalmologist, neuro-ophthalmologist, or ER to a neurologist, a headache specialist. We had a concussion outreach program, right? But then, you leave that central space and you're in the community. And what I've done since I lived very much closer to the city a few years ago and being back in essentially my hometown, I've met with a dozen or so practitioners. So neuropsychologists, pediatricians, physical therapists, neuro-ophthalmologists, and really have been trying to gauge from them like what can we do? Like, can we build this sort of community-based network that we can go to our local schools, to the school districts. We can serve as a panel that can be the education that isn't there, that maybe the larger hospital systems are so spread thin that they can't do it, you know? This way, when we're at when we're at work in the hospital, if a PT realizes their VOR isn't on point because their convergence is off, send them to OT. Um, that exists in the hospitals, in like the larger systems, but it
Mhm.
doesn't exist in the community. So instead, people just treat them to where they can and then they let them go.
Yeah.
But if we can create these systems where it's like, okay, so and so is working on this, but it's vision. They need more of this in order to get them to that next level. Or I'm saying something, okay, I see this, but it's not so my wheelhouse. I need someone who has a better vestibular training, send them to there. Or I think they need a new lens to help with this, send them to this doctor. And so finding the right person in the community, I think that's on us as clinicians to kind of develop these systems, these sort of concussion support networks,
Mhm.
that can be more locally, not locally comprehensive and locally sensitive to like the needs of the community. I go on something like concussion.org, or the Concussion Foundation, and they're like, it's great because they list so many disciplines, but then it's like, well, there's no roadmap. Like, there's nothing here that's really telling me who I should go to or what I should do. And maybe like in my, in my zip code, there's 27 providers, but who does what, you know?
Yep. And whose focus is specifically on concussion? Like who knows
Exactly.
concussions well itself. So yeah, yes, you're speaking exactly to the problem that I have seen and been so frustrated with, and talked to so many people all over the world really who also see this problem, and there's such a need for it. And I like and appreciate your approach to it, to just like grassroots, like, all right, in my community, how can I make a difference right here? And like pulling these providers together and like, um, yeah, and I'd love to follow what you do. Like, let me know how it goes. Like,
Yeah.
how has the response been so far as you've been talking to
Oh,
other
it
clinicians?
it's been great. So I had, this started really me being like, wheels on the ground. Probably over the past like year or so. I had a wild year, but the providers I've found have been so responsive. My goal for this week is actually to like re-email everybody now that I've kind of established a connection. I've been referring back and forth with a few of them. I'm going to bring this up in my meeting tomorrow with the Brain Injury Association of New Jersey. Um, I actually also like I presented on this sort of model recently. And so I think like putting it into practice, I think can help other people do the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, but like one of the big things I learned, during like while I was getting my doctorate. One of them is like so like the different levels of influence you can have. And I think that I always felt that if you weren't making a gigantic change or you weren't, on a giant stage sharing something that it maybe wasn't so worth it.
Mhm.
Um, and so like not everything has to be on the macro level, right? So when we think of these macro levels of influence, like that's good, but where do you actually see the change? And that's in the micro level, influence. Like
So
that's the
true.
discussions you have with people on a day to day. It's reaching out to a doctor and, just having the discussion like, look, I treat concussion and, getting over the part where I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm just trying to make it better for the community and for the people that like are here based on the experience that I know is occurring, and so I think like really harnessing the importance of both levels of influence, macro and micro, and those like sort of interactions and how valuable they can be because, you know, I don't know if you've ever read The Tipping Point, but those
Yes.
micro levels of influence essentially become the macro ones because you tell
Yes.
one person something, they tell three, those three people tell three people before you know it, you're at 18. So it really, multiplies. And that's where every connection's a good one. Even if it's I haven't had a bad response. I actually, aside from one person not answering me, but they ended up switching practices and some people's personalities
Mhm.
aren't, they're not in the only way I can say is like they're maybe not in it for the same reasons I am. Um, but it's still a good, it's just some positive, some different, but
Yeah,
everyone's
well,
had like a good, yeah, response.
that's awesome. I love that, and I do feel like a lot of times, as I've been getting to know people in this space, and like everybody that I've met has been so, especially if they work with concussions, people they want to help people with concussion, like they see the
Yeah.
need, and there's been a lot of yeah, like camaraderie, like just this feeling of wanting to help each other help the people who are suffering with this. So that's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad that it was overwhelmingly positive so far with your response and in trying to set this up, and love that example that you're setting. So thank you for what you're doing there. That's inspiring. It's cool.
Yay.
Very, very cool. So I would love to hear, well, as you've worked with this population, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but some of the common themes that you see needing to be addressed for individuals who are suffering with this, and what do you see as OT's role in helping with those things?
Oh, so that's a really good question. So, primarily I'll talk about vision, just because I think that that's like my sort of specialty area and our specialty area as OTs, and sort of what role vision plays in everything we do.
Hmm.
And therefore, so like return to activity, a return to, activity in the sense of like work, leisure, play, um, life, right? So, um, and I've been shocked by this too. We learn about vision in school. I learned about vision as a new graduate, but really until I was doing it day in, day out, and really like understanding the functional components of how much your eyes do for the rest of your body.
Hmm.
Like, that has been huge. And so I think it's like really those components that like knowing those components of vision and understanding like just their influence on, not just seeing 2020, right? But
Yes.
helping people understand that 2020 vision like is not that important, right? So like really understanding the ins and outs of that and like the education component, because again, people don't know what they don't know. I wouldn't know this if I didn't do what I do. So really explaining to people why we're assessing what we're assessing and how it impacts what they do on a daily basis. So I think that's like, one thing. And then the other would be sort of that sort of, I don't want to say it like it's not like psychosomatic, but it's like the way the symptoms can really kind of take over your entire being. Um, and like those maladaptive patterns of habituation and how impactful they are. But with our role, as an OT, with the right support clinicians, right? So, like I said, I work hand in hand a lot with neuropsychology or with neuro-ophthalmology. And so, sort of knowing and keeping those lines of communication open so that like I can talk with, the neuropsychologist and be like, okay, what strategies did you go over and how can I as the OT now apply that to their work? How can I help them understand what this looks like in real life and help them apply it to their daily life? So really it's like knowing that what we say, the education we provide is so valuable that I feel like 80% of our sessions our education, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, and then also just realizing like leaning to your specialty providers that are in this with you, and letting like it's okay for there to be an overlap with within the like within our disciplines.
Yeah.
But it's like, taking what they're working on and applying it in our lens, as a functional provider, as someone who's like really going through their day to day with them and really helping them kind of eventually get back to like what they want to do and have
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, and I do love that overlap between us. I think it's so good to just have it be reinforced by different people, different lenses. It is so good and so important. Um, so as you're working with people, what have you seen to be some of the, like, what are your favorite tips and tricks, hacks, if you will, for helping people calm their nervous system? Because I always love to have ideas from people as for those who are listening who might be suffering with this, like what could they try that might help when they're feeling overstimulated, when they're having a hard time? What do you like to recommend?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think that these things are pretty specific to each person,
Yeah.
but I do think it's important to share them anyway. Um, because I think that just know there's no harm in trying them.
Yeah.
You'll know if it's not right for you, you know? My one of my big go-tos is wearing earplugs, like noise canceling headphones, but not these, like not Apple, not I shouldn't say that. Not ones that are connected to my phone. I need to be separate.
Mm.
Um, that's me, but I love loop earplugs. I've recommended them to a bunch of my friends recently because of like sensory stimulation, right? And so it's like not wearing them when you're going into a noisy, busy environment, but actually wearing them before. So,
Mm.
um, like, let's say you're driving to and from work, put those, well, maybe not when you're driving, but sit in silence on the road on the drive home instead of maybe listening to the radio or an
Mm.
audiobook. But, and I say like, they don't like completely block out the noise, so it is okay to drive. But when you're going for a walk, even outside in nature, sometimes it's that ambient noise can actually add to that sensory overwhelm in a very sneaky way. And so that's, one thing. Um,
Can I ask, sorry, a
very,
follow-up on
yeah,
that real quick?
yeah.
So would you recommend that if they're going to like a social gathering, it's going to be loud and overwhelming, you would recommend wearing it a little bit beforehand so that it's just like helping to get their system a little bit more calm before they even go in. I assume you would encourage them to keep them in during the event, or would you not?
So you can, I think it depends on the person too. So I've recommended to do it before, like someone who is just like, sometimes like a stressed nervous system can almost come out as like you're trying to do an activity and you just can't execute it, right? And so, for example, folding clothes, you could, wear them when you're trying to do something like that. Empty the dishwasher, one of those sticky, annoying tasks that just keep getting, they keep like making you feel overwhelmed, right? Wearing them before a social event or on the way to a social event is a way of, theoretically saving your spoons. And
Mm.
so keeping, a little bit more of your like emotional energy as a resource rather than exhausting it throughout the day before you get there.
Got it.
You can, of course, but you can wear the earplugs at the social event. That's a personal choice. I think just what I say to some people is like if it's almost like palming in public. I say that too. It's like
Mhm.
palming's another one, right? But if you're going to be doing this at work, get ready to
Putting
answer
your
questions. Yeah,
yes.
get ready to answer questions when people are saying like, "Why are you doing that? Are you okay?"
Mm.
Um, so but 100%. I wore earplugs the other day. They had my kids' school had the Harlem Wizards come, which is like the Harlem Globetrotters, and they were doing basketball tricks. And I was like, "Woof, it just kind of like took a level out so that it wasn't so much. So
Overwhelmed.
then,
Yeah.
yeah. Palming is another one. Taking the palms of your hands, covering your eyes, keeping your eyes open, but not letting any light in and looking into complete darkness. And
Curious why
then, yeah,
'cause I love palming as well. Sorry. Um,
yeah.
I think it's so great. And can you like, does it matter? Does it matter if the eyes are open or closed? I'm curious about that.
So I say yes because if you closed your eyes right now, right, you can sense that the light's on, but your eyes are closed. Your brain is not in
Mhm.
the receiving information.
Mm.
Sort of,
Right.
it's receiving the light, but it's not
It knows that it's not supposed to be
processing.
like trying to process things. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Huh.
then when you look into complete darkness, but your eyes are open, it's almost like I explain it like have you ever done a carpet cleaner? This is so gross. If you've ever done a carpet cleaner and then like you have to like flush the hose at the end, right? But
Mm.
you're sort of giving it that negative pressure. So it's like it's receiving, it's trying to pull, but nothing's going. So it essentially cleans out the hose. And so if
Uh,
you think of your visual system as the hose and this, your eyes are open and they're ready to receive the information, but nothing's coming. So it's almost clearing out the visual pathway.
that's a cool analogy. I like that. That's super interesting.
Yeah,
And I
full
hadn't,
of them.
yeah, that idea of keeping your eyes open specifically while you're palming. I don't think I had made that connection, but I can see how that does make sense to me. So that's cool. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you. And before you jump into another one, I'm familiar with spoon theory, but in case somebody isn't and they heard you say
Oh,
save your spoons, do you want to just tell us really quick what
yeah.
that is?
Yeah. So the spoon theory is sort of borrowed from the chronic illness population. It is a way of thinking about our energy as a resource. Um, it's a really, it's a really nice way of thinking of this. You start your day with 10 spoons, and everything that you do kind of takes away a spoon, right? So taking a shower, getting dressed, making breakfast, answering your emails. Point being, you haven't even started your day and you're already down to 5 spoons. You only have 5 spoons left to go through the rest of your day. And conserving spoons or how to get spoons back is a little bit different for everybody. Everyone has a different recipe. But if there's something we can do throughout your day, wearing earplugs while you are, you know, going through your morning routine, if that can save a spoon for you, then that's worth it, right? Or if you get to the end of your day and you need to put your earplugs in while you're emptying the dishwasher and that gives you a spoon back, then that's, a way to kind of conserve your energy as a resource so that you're able to do and engage in the activities that you want to do throughout the day.
Perfect. Yes, thank you. That I just
Yeah.
want to make sure if people weren't familiar with it, that they would get a little piece of what that means. So thank you. Okay, keep going. Let's hear more of your
Okay.
tricks.
So the other one, I like this one too because I think that it's very popular right now. Another sort of thing that us as we at OTs we've been kind of doing for quite some time. But I was actually having this conversation. So one of my best friends from college is she's a therapist for moms. And so we were like, let's put together like a list of ways to like you manage your sensory overwhelm throughout the day, like whether you have anxiety or you're healing from a concussion. So this is, perfect.
Yeah.
Um but she was like, oh, weighted blanket. And I'm like, a weighted blanket's nice, weight is nice, but I, sitting down for me with a weighted
Yeah.
blanket, like to go to bed,
When?
sure.
Right.
But right, when? And so a lot of people have weighted vests right now. And so I actually recommend for people who are really in this sort of like sensory overwhelm to kind of calm and reorganize their nervous system is to wear a weighted vest during sort of non-labor intensive activities. Again, you can do this during like emptying the dishwasher. You can wear a weighted vest when you take your dog for a walk. You can wear a weighted vest when you are folding laundry, when you're organizing your kitchen cabinets, or something like that. Even sitting on the couch, right? So when you're moving around your home, having sort of that deep pressure can help to reorganize your sensory system. And um, I did post the other day about
Yes.
being in the car with car sickness. I've also recommended for people to wear a weighted vest while they're in the car, more as a passenger, right? Because it gives you that it reorganizes there's other components to it, but it reorganizes your sort of sensory system and grounds you while you're in motion, and there's that sensory mismatch between your brain, your eyes, and your body.
So cool. So, and was that helpful for your friend? You did have
Oh
the post about
yeah.
it, and yeah.
Yeah, so what I had done, so the two of them sitting next to me were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm feeling sick." But we were also going on winding roads. And so my first line of defense for them was to do visual anchoring. So like finding a static street sign and then keep your eyes on it. And as you move closer, then you have sort of this like a static visual anchor instead of like having to, process all of that visual emotion. Wasn't really helping. And so then I really applied deep pressure and she was like, I don't know what just happened, but I'm like, I'm not gonna I'm not going to throw up. And so she had a lot of um, success there.
That's really
Turns
cool.
out, yeah, I have to look at her eyes. She's got some stuff going on. So
Do a little OT there. Good.
yeah, I was like, I gotta look at that. I'm like, something's happening. But so yeah, she does have I am not surprised that she's having this sensory mismatch because she
Mhm.
would present, very quickly, like as you would think she's a concussion patient. Her accommodation between both of her eyes is different. So she's essentially seeing with one eye here and one eye here. And so
Mhm.
when she's trying to work together,
Yeah,
they're
that
not
would
going.
be a perfect storm in a car when you're trying to
Yeah.
drive and not get car sick. Yes, that would be challenging. So that's really cool. I appreciate that tidbit. I'm gonna pass that on. I have some friends, family who are particularly prone to car sickness. So
Yeah.
very cool. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for this. I would love to hear what you tell your clients who have been making progress, feeling good about how things are going, and then something happens and they feel like they've had this major setback and like 10 steps backwards, and that's like so devastating. So many people go through it. Like what do you tell them? What are your words of encouragement, comfort,
Yeah.
whatever?
So,
Consolation.
for the most part, when this occurs, and this is very common, I think a lot of people are like, well, how come am I feeling more symptomatic? And, you know, or, there's a few lines of defense. And the first one is really like most of the time people feel more because they're actually doing more. And when I reorient them to that, so like, let's say I've been treating this person for 6 weeks, I try to say like, think about where you were 2 months ago. Like, you couldn't go to work. Now you're working part-time. It's normal for us to feel a little crummy by the end of the day. You know, that is really anticipated. But you have to value, and I try to encourage them, you should be, you should think about where you were and where you are now when it is something related to that.
Mhm.
Um, and I repeat, if you're doing more, you should be feeling more, you know? Um, I also really value my clinical assessment. And so I will often look at their initial evaluation scores on different assessments, and then give them the feedback like you were here and look at where you are now. You've improved by this much, and kind of really sharing the clinical information with the client, I think is very valuable. And I don't think I did that so much as a new clinician. I would just kind of do my assessments and, treat the patient, but really involving them as like a co sort of leader of their program, and helping them to understand like what applies to what and where improvement really kind of comes out functionally, I think is also very valuable, in that sense. And so I think it's really kind of engaging them on that level as like a peer, essentially, right? And then also reinforcing that like doing more sometimes makes you feel more. Again, like it depends on like the situation. If they've hit their head again, my terminology, my words might change a bit. That like, it happens. Um, but again, it's kind of specific to the person, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe I'd offer a reassessment so we can see, how they're doing. Because as we know, also like they can become reconcussed, if something does occur, or they go through like a stressful life event and symptoms can just come right back. Or
Mhm.
sometimes it's just a short-lived blip where then like within a week or two, they've kind of resolved. So it's almost like it doesn't mean that this is has failed. It's just let's take it session by session, day by day, control what you can within the day, and then we keep going.
Yes, beautiful. I love that. I think I'm going to share again. I've shared this before on the podcast, but in case people haven't heard it, I love this analogy that my friend came up with. It's like the catapult analogy, where it feels like if you're sitting in the spot where you would put the rock for the catapult, right? Like you pull it back, it's like it feels like a setback. It feels like you've gone backwards, but a lot of times that is the catalyst that will shoot you forward and allow you to Like if it is something, if you have been re-injured or what, or your different symptoms are coming up that you haven't experienced before, and like what is happening right now, like it will prompt you to seek out the help that will help you, and that will push you forward in ways that you wouldn't have grown otherwise. Um,
Yeah.
and like you said, sometimes it's just a little blip and it feels really frustrating, but then you're like it does propel you forward, even though you're not feeling it when you're in the backward position. So
Yeah, of course. Of
yeah.
course.
I think that can be a helpful kind of perspective to take on it, just to know that it's not forever. And even if it is a re-injury, it's like, okay, but you know so much more now this time around than you did before. Like you're in such
Of
a better
course.
position to find the help you need to get the recovery to take care of yourself in a way that will be very meaningful and helpful in the progress that you want to make. So just yeah, there's still hope.
I, I think, right. And I think sometimes it's that validation that like it's like just being heard and being understood. I think I've had so many people in my office and they're like, this is so grounding to just have someone say, like, I know, like, I understand, like, or yes, like, you can move forward from this instead of, I don't think I can help you, I think so. Um, anything, any sort of just like not like a cheerleading, right? It's like that validation, that comment, that
Yeah.
an analogy that like kind of gets them to understand sort of like where they are and understand that like their symptoms are, normal, not good, not normal
Mm.
normal, but we've
Yes.
seen it before and like
Yes.
even if you've had a setback, you can move past it. I think that's very validating and very therapeutic for people.
Yes. And it's real. I think that too, like knowing that the things you're experiencing are real and like having somebody recognize that for you with you is
Yes.
helpful too. And also just being like, yeah, this sucks. Like sometimes you do
Yeah.
have to just like be mad for a minute, right? Like and
Yeah.
sad and all the feelings that come along with it. Like that grief is real and needs to
Yes. Yep.
seen as well. So yeah, so important. So what advice do you have for caregivers, loved ones, people who are trying to support their person the best way they can? What do you recommend to them?
I think it's exactly that. So I think it's like knowing that you can validate someone's feelings, validate what they're going through, without saying that, well, I thought concussions would be,
Mm,
done, or I thought your symptoms should be over, by now. Shouldn't you be healed already? Knowing that it's not a marathon. I mean, it's not a sprint, it's a
uh-huh.
marathon
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
That, understanding, I think like as caregivers, if you could understand that concussions, any type of brain injury, they're really like an onion. And sometimes you peel off one layer and you have to kind of switch directions a little bit, depending on what is found.
Yeah.
Um, and knowing that it could be you could really get the care you need with one or two providers, but sometimes you might need a little bit more. Um, I think it's important for caregivers to have almost as much education as, the client themselves,
Mhm.
um, so that they can best understand sort of like what they're going through. Um, And sometimes that is also understanding that you don't understand what they're going through, and just to kind of verbalize that to them and say, like, look, I don't know what you're going through, but I'm here and I am happy to help with whatever you need. I think that that can be, really, really beneficial too.
Yes, absolutely. That's well said. Thank you. Um, Anything else? We're just running out of time here, but is there anything else that's like on your heart and mind that like needs to be said that you want to make sure we cover in relation to concussion prevention?
No, I think we really covered it. I'm really excited because I think that, like you said, I think that there's a lot more discussion about concussion, in the past couple of years. And there are again like these systems that are popping up, which is great. But we're sort of like on to the next chapter. And we're at a weird point where it's like a lot of, unless you're in concussion, you might not be up to date on all of the concussion
Hmm.
happenings. Um, but I think that I think that that's changing. And I think that podcasts like this one. I think that the different ways people are communicating and sharing information are really, really valuable, because you're creating those, like I said, like those micro level influences that change the bigger picture.
Yeah.
That's all.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, it is so important and for people to talk about it. Just like be aware of it and aware that talking about it can help somebody else too. I think that's a big part of this. It's just like wanting to help open the conversation up because if people like it's I'm sure you've experienced this too. When you tell somebody, "Oh, I help people who are dealing with concussions," they're like, "Oh, my neighbor had a really bad concussion. Oh, my
Yeah.
cousin. Oh, I know." Like everybody knows somebody, but nobody talks about it. Or like it's just not
Right.
really, it's not a thing. So like getting more information through all of these channels and those micro influences is really does make a big difference. So
Yes,
thank you
absolutely.
for doing what you're doing and being a part of this. I think this is also so good. We'll get this information out there to people. So if people want to hear more from you, work with you, learn what you're doing,
Mhm.
how can they do that?
So they can go on to my Instagram, which is evolving_OT, or my website, which is www.evolvebrainandbody.com. Or, send me an email. You can do my kellianne.arnella@gmail.com or hello@evolvingoccupationaltherapy.com,
Okay.
which
Awesome.
we can
Thank you.
link. I don't know. We can link. I don't know. That's like
Yeah,
a
I
lot
will
of
put them in the
words.
show notes so people can, yes, people will be able to see those and get them on the show notes. So, thank you for what you're doing and the good work you're
You
doing. And
too.
I love this. It's so good to make this connection. Thank you, Kellyanne.
Yay.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.